going through, no matter how you feel, remember, he's still worthy of all the praise. Let's go.
It's good for the soul. Oh, I got a long way to go, but it won't stop the pain. No, that's the kind of thing that keeps me coming back again and again. Till I see your face, I won't be satisfied. No, no, I won't stop. I won't quit until I'm yours and you are mine. Don't you know I can't live my life for nobody else but me. Every time I walk, trying to tell me what to do. I live without you. Oh, that's the way that love goes. That's the way it goes. You said it's good for the soul. Good for the soul.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. You're tuning in live to the Healthy Soul Talk Show with your girl, your favorite therapist, Dr. Kimberly Thomas. Come on in here. Welcome. It is a beautiful fall day, and I'm so excited to be joining you live for this enlightening and much needed conversation on this evening, celebrating the awareness of domestic violence. And yes, I said celebrating because it's important to embrace this conversation and talk about what needs to be talked about, but also take action. So I'm very happy, and I don't mind sharing what needs to be talked about as it relates to mental health and everything that comes along with it. So welcome, come on in. If you're tuning in live on Facebook, thank you for joining us. Blog Talk Radio, welcome, welcome. If you would like to join the show, make some comments, I have some questions. You can dial 323-870-4375. Again, that's 323-870-4375. Press 1 to join. And if you would like to email the show, any questions, concerns, or topics that you want us to discuss, you can email us at hst@ttlomedia.net. Again, that's hst@ttlomedia.net. And of course, you can follow us on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, as well as Twitter at Healthy Soul Talk. All one word. Again, welcome. You're tuning in live to the Healthy Soul Talk Show with your girl, your favorite therapist, Dr. Kimberly Thomas, and I'm ready to check in with my favorite producers. How are you all doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. It's Friday. It's Friday Eve. That's what we've at my school. That's what we have named Thursday. We don't even call Thursday anymore.
Really?
Thursday no longer has a name. It is literally called Friday Eve. You know, it must not be all that great if we can't.
Wow.
If Thursday has lost its name. Yeah.
Now, is it a low-key day on Fridays, or is it just as
No, it's just as bad. It's just the fact that we know
one day closer?
that is So it's officially Thursday Eve.
Okay.
Yeah. Things might be different on the other side of the room, but over here on this side of the room, it's Thursday Eve. That's all I got for you.
Oh my goodness, Latanya, how are you?
I'm well.
Come on, I'm well. Yes.
Is she proper too? I'm well.
Everything going well with you? You being treated right?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
No complaint.
Praise him.
Very good. Very good. Yes. I am, for some reason, I'm ready for the first break for school.
Already? How you ready before the people that work at the school?
I'm feeling some type of way. I cannot seem to get this schedule in order. And I don't know really, how to explain it, because I have a bus service who at this point runs when it wants to run, and when it doesn't run, that means I got to push my schedule back and up, right? Because I have to be there to drop off and pick up, and it's just a lot right now. And yeah. So it's like enough already.
Okay.
And you know that there was a post you posted not too long ago.
Yes.
About remember those who are in you were going by grade levels.
Yeah. Remember that the 5th graders are really 3rd graders who've been sitting on the couch for 18 months?
Yeah. So I thought about that, and I was like, self, right? You got to be a little bit more understanding with this lack of motivation to do homework and just the whole, you mean to tell me I got to get up and do 5 pages and this, that, and the other? And it's like, no, I'm not trying to hear that. I'm just, and then I'm just going to be honest. I'm the parent that says, it's okay, let's go to bed. Yeah. You don't have to do it until the morning. So I have not found the rhythm of doing homework at night in the capacity that it's giving me.
Okay.
So pray for me. Pray for me.
Always, absolutely.
Because I'm struggling.
We all are at some point.
I am struggling. All right, here we go. So this month we've been, diving into talking about domestic violence. For the past couple of weeks, we've been just really looking at the behaviors and, victimology and, perpetrators. And so I wanted to wrap up talking about the importance of accountability and change. Like we talk about the awareness part of it, of course, helping survivors get the resources they need and, recover, right, from the trauma of being in that abusive relationship. But rarely do we focus on rehabilitation of the abuser. And so this is so important when you say, well, what can help reduce, what can actually make a core difference, right, in the statistics, and that is helping rehabilitate the abusers. And so that's where I want to go for this topic tonight, is really zoning in on accountability and change and actually promoting that, right? Because I think about that whole, that statement that, once an addict, always an addict, once an abuser, always an abuser. If we keep that mindset, we won't address the issue. You know what I'm saying? We're not addressing the issue if we're not at least instilling hope that there is a way to address the issues and you can change. You don't have to continue victimizing, right? Or being abusive in your relationship. So that's where I am this evening, is really talking about change, what intervention looks like for an abuser and aggressor, and just really putting out there, if you have a loved one or if you are that person that needs to address these needs, there is help. You don't have to stay as is, right? Because that's helpless. That's a helpless state. There's a hopeless state, right? To that you feel like, okay, there's no hope. There's no outlet for change. And so, as you know, we always start the show with a spiritual connect point. And here's another question, right? That we visited this before, but I thought about this in this particular context here that we're talking about when we ask that question: can God change anyone? Right? And I was thinking about this, especially what we talked about last week, and just really, do we underestimate God and his power to change someone? Right? Are we selective in who we apply the power of God to as it relates to change, deliverance, right? Setting free. And I posed that question, and I don't know if it's a rhetorical question, because the answer is right. Of course he can, but I feel like as a body, right, as a body of Christ, just a part of society, we underestimate a person's ability to change, and when we connect it to a spiritual point, somehow there are some things that we often say or allude to that God can't fix, right? That God can't fix. And so I brought this question, and I'm going to let you dive into the spiritual component of that, because I know that the Bible is full of, testimonies, right? The type of issues he delivered and healed people from.
Right.
But I guess in today's time, why are we like that? Why do we question, or why do we select who God can change and how he can change? Why do we often put that out there? Or just the whole context of, the Bible says God can do anything, that he's all powerful.
Absolutely.
Right, and all knowing.
Absolutely.
And that question, can God change anyone? Is it so?
It's absolutely so. Thank you again. The part of it, the human side of us believes that once we know a person, once we've dealt with a person, once we have been in and around a person, that we kind of know them, and we think that there is no hope for change in that person. So we kind of restrict that person to just being who they are, no more, no less.
Yes.
I want to give you a Malcolm X quote that I've been using with the kids, the children rather, at school. We put a quote of the day up every week. We use a weekly message, and there's a weekly message every week that we use, and we try to get them to explain what it sounds like to them. So we've been using these quotes by Malcolm X, and the quote goes something like, "A wise man can play the part of a clown, but a clown can't play the part of a wise man." That's a Malcolm X quote.
Okay.
A wise man can play the part of a clown, but a clown can't play the part of a wise man. And so they didn't understand it at first, and I had them think about it. I said, think about what a clown does. A clown has a purpose. That purpose is to either entertain you, to be the center of attention, to make people laugh.
Yeah.
Some instances to scare people, depending on whatever situation it is. But the wise man can also play the part of a clown, but because he will study, he'll take the time to learn what it is to do it. Yeah. But then he can also go back to being who he is. The clown is kind of stuck in that one realm, and that's all he knows. So take that same story and then use the story of, hold that analogy over here, and then take the same one and use the story of the scorpion and the frog. The story goes that there's a scorpion and a frog on the side of a river, and they're trying to cross. The scorpion wants to cross, and he asks the frog, "Can you please help me get to the other side of the river?" And the frog gets skeptical. He's like, "Oh, I don't really mess with you because, you're a scorpion. I don't get out with you like that." But he's like, "No, man, I'm just trying to get to the other side. I'm good." And so, of course, the frog was like, "You know what? I got you." Frog jumps, he says, "Come on, climb on my back. I'll take you across." They roll across the river. As soon as they get on the land, the scorpion stings the frog. Because that's what scorpions would do. Right? They can't change who they are. They can't change who they are.
Right.
People can't change who they are, but God can.
Okay.
God can change people all the time. God can make, if you choose to want to be changed. So there has to be something on the inside of you that has a need or a desire to change. So people ask the question, can people change, or are we just victims of circumstance, or victims of fate? But people can change, but we can't change. But we can change, but we really can't change ourselves no more than a drowning person can save himself.
Okay.
Right? All right.
Okay.
So if we're going to go to scripture, scripture, Jeremiah says this in Jeremiah 13:23. I'm just going to give you a real quick one. He says, the Bible even asks, can a leopard take away its spots? That's what the Bible asks the question. Can a leopard take away its spots?
Okay.
And the answer is no. But it's not, it's more of most people, it's not them, it's a heart issue. So if I've been raised in an environment that only shows me one way until
Yes.
I put myself in a position to see another way, then my way is the only way that I know that's right.
Yes.
And even though my way may work for me, or I believe it works for me, doesn't matter how it makes you feel. So it has to be an issue of can we make different choices? And sometimes consequences don't necessarily force us to change.
That is true.
It just means we're
That is
paying for
true.
something.
That is true.
That's why you have repeat offenders.
Yes.
Repeat offenders do what they do because, it's consequences. And they go, you know what, I can, it's just like kids who get used to whoopings. I can take the whooping
Yes.
because what I was going to do is more important to me. I can deal with that.
Yes.
So the punishment never meets. It's understanding what the accountability factor is. Do I understand the damage that I caused? And now I'm going to hold myself accountable. Do I care enough?
Yes.
Yeah, do I care enough?
And I think that we have to have that belief in each other, right? Because some people don't ever make it to that level of self-reflection.
Facts.
Right? Because they're always told there's no hope. They won't ever change, right? You hear those absolute statements of, why
That's
should
just
we-
how she is.
Right, right. And so that does not motivate, nor does that instill hope
Right.
or optimism, right, in that particular person. And so, I think for purposes of, for me, the takeaway is there is nothing that you can be or do that God can address,
Absolutely.
right? And we have to always believe that and not be selective for who we encourage, right, with that particular belief. Does that make sense? It's like we can't be selective in who we encourage to change or have the potential to change. And so I think that's where we all have to check ourselves to make sure that we're not spewing negativity. We're not depositing this spirit of you're stuck where you are in people because you have a personal opinion, right, about who they are and what they won't ever be. And you've turned that into basically saying that God will ignore them, right? That God won't even hear them, or God is, he's not even looking your way to redeem you. So that's I like that, right? To know that, yes, as an individual, you have to pursue change, right? But also that the people around you, you have to make sure you're around people that believe in you, right? You have to have people around you that at least can say, hey, you go ahead and do what you need to do, right? I'm right here with you. If you need anything or if you need a word of encouragement, I'm going to have just that much faith in the process, right? That God has, that all of us can be delivered if we pursue it, right? But yeah, I just put that question out there because when I hear those statements that so many people are told they can't change, and they act accordingly.
Yeah.
Right? It's this role that
Oh,
they fall
then
into.
now I want to meet your expectation. You say I'm this,
Right.
let me meet your expectation now, because that's all you see.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you all you see.
Yes.
One of the best examples in the Bible, because I gave you a half of a verse earlier. I didn't really give you a verse, but if you will, Psalm 51,
Okay.
51. Psalm 51 is the verse where David, after being caught in his transgression by Jonathan, and being told that God knows about what he did to get Bathsheba, David says, "Create in me a clean heart,
Yes.
oh God, renew the right spirit
Right
with the
spirit.
right spirit within me.
Yes.
Cast me not away from thy presence, and take not thy Holy Spirit from me. Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation, and uphold me with thy free spirit. Then will I teach others
Yes. Yes.
thy ways, and sinners shall be converted to me." Then he says, "Delivered me from my blood guiltiness, O God, that thou make my salvation, and my tongue shall sing aloud thy righteousness." That was David saying, I want to be changed.
Yes.
take this desire take this thing from me. So
Yes.
there has to be a need and a want and a desire to change.
Yes.
Even if you don't know how, if there is the want to, you're already ahead of the game.
Pursuit will happen.
Yeah.
You pursue it.
But you gotta want it though.
Yes.
You gotta want it.
Yes. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Felicia. Praise the Lord. Thank you for tuning in with us. Sheldon Wilson, welcome. He is on the road. Felicia says the question can be answered if turned into a statement. People struggle with this because we think it's our job instead of letting God do the changing instead of us. God can change anyone, period. Absolutely. And they go on to say free will. Sheldon says, except a man be born again.
Yeah.
He mentioned Nicodemus, Saul to Paul, Simon to Peter.
Yeah, come on, Sheldon. Yeah.
Crazy man in Luke 8 living in tombs.
Yeah,
and cutting
come on,
himself
sir.
with stone. Absolutely. You know, and I think about that, right? If here's the Bible. Fast forward to 2021.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing too hard for God. Right? What makes us think that what's going on today, God can't address?
Because we are so far removed. And I've said this so many times on my own show. We treat God as though he is some sky god some sky god that is so busy and so far removed dealing with all of the other things in the world that when we in our mess, he is not paying attention.
Right.
So we forget that when it says about, you know, if he's worried about if his eye is on the sparrow, then why not me? Right? So if God can do all of those things then, and we forget that because we treat the Bible like it's just Bible stories instead of our own. That's why I tell people all the time, it's great to tell people about the stories in the Bible. But some people need to know your biblical story. Because if you look at our biblical stories, they are just as good, if not more compelling than the Bible stories. Yeah, you and I ain't walking on no water, at least not that I know of. Now, if you walking on it, that's a wonderful thing. Sheldon says we act like heaven has to process claims. I know that's right. But we forget how powerful God is because we forget our relationship is not where it should be. Right? So we forget to delve into that resource as often as possible because we don't recognize, we forget to delve into that source. We treat God like I said, like I love that claim, that process claim. Like we have to wait and wait and wait. And it first has to be a desire.
Yes.
Tell me what to do to be born again. What do I need to do? How can I be saved? How can I, what do I need to do?
Lifestyle. Yes.
Yeah. And there has to be a real heartfelt desire. You know, I know we're not trying to do the church thing, but if when a person gets up who is who has no relationship with God and he walks down that aisle at church, the moment they stand up out of their seat, they've already made the choice. Yes. They've already got it in their heads and in their hearts. I want something different. Yes. Then when they take that walk down the aisle, they're saying, I'm committing myself to something different. When somebody decides to come to counseling, they're saying, I want something different. Yes. What I've been doing is not working. I desire a change. So I'm going to call whoever I need to call. I want to save my family. I want to save my marriage. I want to save whatever it is. I'm going to do whatever's necessary for me and for us. That's where the change starts.
Right.
But then if you're talking from a Christian standpoint, absolutely he can. But he's not going to do it just because. He's going to do it when you say, God, fix me.
Right.
When you say, God, fix me, or God, I desire change, that's when God moves. He ain't going to move because again, that's all Felicia said, free will. Yeah. So we have to, again, be willing. Yeah. We have to be willing to submit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Good evening, Tiffany. Tiffany, how are you? Welcome. I love these comments going on here. I put that question because this evening we're talking about domestic violence awareness and accountability and change, right? And so, of course, we talk about the facts, right? We've been presenting domestic violence facts. And so the fact this week, the did you know, is 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence, such as beating, burning, and strangulation by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Right now, if you're among 4 women and you ask that question, have you ever been physically assaulted, right? Has your partner ever, strangled you, hit you with multiple blows, right? Burned you, whether that's with a cigarette lighter or, held your hand over the stove? One of you will say yes.
And what was that number again?
1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men.
Wow.
Have been victims of severe physical violence.
Wow.
By an intimate partner in their lifetime. And so when I think about, when we typically think about a violent incident, we do say that is an incident, right? It's an occasion, it's an event, it's a situation. But when we think about abuse, it's a pattern. And so we often have to take a look at many people are in abusive and violent relationships, period. Because it was not a one-time incident. It's a recurrent, right? It's a recurrent event. It's a pattern of abuse. And we've been talking about the different types of abuse this month. And now we're just going to zone in on, what these behaviors that need to be addressed, what does change look like? Okay. But keeping in mind, 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence. Now, as we get into talk about, you may say, well, why do abusers abuse? Right? That's a good question. And so we know that the umbrella that we study underneath evolves around power and control. And that's a very vague statement in terms of, well, how does one get to desiring such power and control over another person? Well, there's a few things that we know how, right, and what leads to a person desiring power and control by any means necessary in an intimate relationship. And so these are just some factors. I appreciate this conversation because my desire is that people go and explore more about this themselves to feel, number one, assess where they are, but also to spread the conversation, to have these conversations with young people, even family members, even with their partners, to say, are we in a healthy relationship? Right? Is this a violent and an abusive-free relationship? If we clearly define what abuse is, if we clearly define what violent incidents are we healthy? Right? Are we investing in healthy practices, or are we abusive in what we do? All right. So we know that there's no one answer that explains the how and what leads to people who repeatedly abuse others to continue their actions of power and control. But what we do know is that sometimes, if not a good percentage, the pattern of abuse was learned at an early age in a home where an adult abused another adult. We actually underestimate that particular concept. Right? When we look at, listen to the fights that happen in school. And I don't work in the school. I just hear about, what goes on. And I've done some interventions, worked on a few projects with some schools. But I've really zoned in on kids fight very hard these days. They fight to severely harm. It's almost like they fight to take each other out.
Yes.
Not fight to say, hey, let's go ahead and square up, get this over with.
No.
It's a fight to take you out. They had to learn that somewhere, right? And so it's very strong when you say what's going on in our homes, what's going on in our communities. Growing up witnessing and or experiencing violent behavior tends to shape a person's world in terms of victims and perpetrators. Right? It says here, when one spends their childhood as a victim, the tendency is to become an abuser without realizing the tremendous pain being caused to others. It's almost like that child who grows up being abused or misused and nobody's caring about how they feel. It's like, how then does he or she learn to concern themselves with how others feel? Right? Because I'm going to hurt you. No, I don't even know how it feels to address when I hurt somebody, because nobody addressed me when they hurt me.
Right.
I had to keep going. And so I learned how to make people comply, because that's how I was treated. Right. I looked at various relationships in my family, whether they were my caregivers, aunts and uncles and cousins. I looked at people, and many times, on this journey, because we work with domestic violence aggressors, the story is often, this is what I saw growing up. And people stayed in relationships, right? So in some cultures, right, and if many, if not all, there's some level of, we've all seen an abusive and violent relationship where those two people stayed together. And so I learned that this may be the norm. I learned that this may be a way, right? We just make each other comply. And so that's just one piece of it. When you think about what is that whole concept of a person having the audacity, as we say, to try to control and have power over another person in an intimate relationship, number one, they could have seen that growing up and it worked.
Yeah. Felicia made a comment, her last comment, she says that she mentioned a woman last week, I guess, that was having some domestic violence. She says, I had to accept the fact that she didn't think it was a problem. She has normalization, or normalized it rather. She says, I can't help if she thinks nothing is wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. So there is a, I think there has to be a conversation. We've had, you mentioned fights in schools. We had a fight yesterday. Two big fellas. They now this is middle school. These are 7th and 8th graders, but they tall as me fighting. Okay. So it's like they fighting like grown men fighting. And then today it was two girls fighting, two 6th graders fighting, like grown women. Squaring up. Yes. And it's I'm not going to fight to say I stole on you or whatever. I'm fighting so that you don't get up. Yep. That's the mentality is there. And there has to be the causation. If that's, there has to be we have to know what the causation is and recognize that it's coming from somewhere, this need to not just fight, but to fight and destroy versus I'm just fighting I'm fighting so I can go home versus I'm fighting so you don't get to go home. Yeah, and I think that boils over into our violence in our city. I know I don't want to stretch it outside of you're dealing strictly with domestic right now, but there is that, I believe there are intersecting factors that are interwound or interwoven. Right. That is the cause of all of this rage.
Our behaviors, right? How we conduct ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that's that first point, right? When you think about the how and what leads to it, a significant part of this is how a person grows up, their belief systems about women, their belief systems about men, and how they should control, right? And how one controls, but also how they may have been treated, right, as a certain gender growing up, which includes victimization and just the overall, this is how boys act, this is how girls act, and if you don't act accordingly, you get punished. Right? And so that's that first part. Of another part is some abusers believe themselves to be victims, right? Which they often were, meaning their experiences in life, but now they've turned it to say, whoever I am now, right, because I've been treated or I've been having this experience along the journey of life, I'm now justified in my actions of being violent in my relationships. Right? And it says here, this type of abuser craves the control that was missing in their early life. So there was a time where I didn't have a say, so I had to comply, and I was forced to comply. And, you know, I'm tired of being a victim. And now I've said it in my mind that I'm not going no more, right? I'm not going through this, and this is how I'm going to. Matter of fact, I'm learning from what was done to me, right? And now I have no concept that I may be doing something wrong, because now I've told myself I'm justified. It's my time now. Right. And I'm going to be in control of this. You're not going to do this. And I'm not going to even allow you to even act a certain way. Right. It's almost like you generalize men and women, whatever relationship you're in. And you're saying, I'm going to treat you accordingly. I don't care who you are. I don't, you know, whoever you tell me you are, it doesn't matter. It's who I say you are.
Right.
And I'm going to treat you accordingly. Right. And so when you think about this, and we're understanding, it's almost like understanding the drive to always maintain power and control over somebody else in a relationship is critical to helping somebody change. Right. And that means that we have to sit down and talk to abusers. We have to, and I use the word abusers because we have a name for everything, right? Aggressors, abusers, perpetrators, right? Whatever this phrase need to be for this particular conversation, we need to understand that there is a root cause of the need to have power and control. And this is where intervention comes in, right? And I know that you may say, okay, well, how willing are people that identify that they are abusive or they are violent in their relationships? How likely are they to go get help? That depends. Right? Because we work with a large mandated population.
Mandated.
Right? And most people think, well, mandated just means they're court ordered. I will agree with that. Mandated is largely part court ordered, but there are people who come in under different circumstances that are mandated. So which can range from, they have lost their children in the process of being in a violent relationship. There are those who are going through divorce, and as a part of, okay, if you want, to address the issues, we have to address these specific dynamics. There are people who, where their partners threaten to leave, right? If they don't get help, and here they are, we still can say they're mandated because of who? Their partner, right? Is saying, I'm going to leave if you don't get help. Domestic violence is not a relationship problem. So it's not I only go get help if we get couples counseling. Domestic violence, the addressing of violent tendencies, violent behaviors, the need for power and control is not a relationship issue. It is an individual issue. There's nothing we can do in a couples counseling session to address one person's choice to be violent. Right? And that concept comes from, it will always be this: if he or she didn't do this, then I wouldn't respond like this. So we have to eliminate the factor that it is a relationship issue. You make a choice to be violent. There is no one can make you in an intimate relationship be violent. In essence, you're saying that you can't control yourself.
Unlike the animal or the scorpion, that's its instinct. That's not who you are. We weren't born violent people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's that whole, right, when you say I wouldn't be violent if it wasn't for this person, right? Part of intervention is exploring, what are you actually saying when you make that statement, right? Can you control yourself or can you not control yourself? Because if you're saying this person made you without even forcing you to do it, then how then did they make you, right? And so these intervention programs, they are certified programs, right? Good evening, David. How are you? Welcome. With these intervention programs, it's very structured. So I want to really talk about this because intervention for domestic violence aggressors, we call it a certified partner abuse intervention program, is a certified program that ranges from 6 to 9 months. So this is not a come for 5 sessions and you're done. A certified partner abuse intervention program is at least 6 to 9 months every week. In every program that's legit is certified by the state of Illinois. We go through a credentialing process and we have a curriculum. We're going to get into properly trained staff to actually address accountability and where these belief systems and change will come from is essential in this process. So it takes time, right? The program is designed to get to the root of the abusive pattern to effect long-term change. All right. Programs are based on a number of things, right? Which includes domestic abuse, where they crave attention, right? Those triggers, as we call it, those red flags. How much do you know about yourself and how you evolved into this person? We go back into, systems of childhood and even some of the things that they've experienced in their relationships where they still feel the need, right, to gain power and control of another person. So there is a certified program to help domestic violence abusers. All right. And so really getting into that, searching out those programs. There are many out there. I put the link on our page at Healthy Soul Talk. There's a link there that says if you're in Illinois and you're searching for a certified domestic violence program, DHS has the most current list of providers in the state of Illinois, right? In every county, there's just about a provider who provides these services. And of course, Healthy Soul Talk is one of those providers, but I'm all about accessibility, right? So if you down south and, in the southern part, there's somebody out there for you. We're virtual, so we can meet you online, right? On Zoom. So that's not going to be an issue if you really want to get help. And so back to the certified program, right? The certified program, it positions a person to think about how to take accountability. And you know what? That's not easy, right? How do you ask someone to come into this space for approximately 26 weeks and talk about what happened, what went left, how do you see your role, what belief systems do you need to dismantle? It's almost like taking apart a robot, right? You remember those robots who had a bunch of screws and, take out all the screws and then put yourself back together again. Do you know how vulnerable a person has to become?
And it's a choice.
And it's a choice. And we as providers have to be gentle to say, if you allow us to support you on this journey, right? You will see that we're non-judgmental. You get the same confidentiality as the person who's going through individual counseling or, some other program that we have. There is no, you abuse somebody, you come on up in here so we can tell you like it is. That's not a certified partner abuse intervention program. And I think that that's the conception, right? Sometimes people are turned off because they feel like, if I'm going through this, right, or if I'm doing this, you're going to judge me. I don't want to tell you about all the arrests that I've had or how many times the police have been called out because you hearing that, I don't know how you're going to look at me.
Facts.
You understand what I'm saying?
Facts.
And I'll get to some questions in a moment to where this is how deep we go in this program to say, we know you were abusive. We know you were violent, but let's really talk about how this looked. And that's not easy to ask somebody. Can you be specific with what you called your partner? Don't just tell me you called them out of their name. I need you to tell me what you said.
Yeah, I called them a so-and-so.
You understand what I'm saying?
A low down, dirty so-and-so.
You have to create a safe space even for this program if we want effective change.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Because the only way we get to the root is to say, tell me what you really did. Tell me how you really were. Because you need to hear it and I need to hear it to figure out this new plan of action. Right?
I want to get to Felicia. I don't know if the Felicia thing says, she says, doing research, I see most domestic relationships, some establish control early, like the Ike and Tina situation.
Okay.
So when the situation continues to escalate, the person has no support or anywhere to go. There is a, I think we when you talk about that safe space, we have to, when we talk about a safe space, it has to be a place where what we talk about here is not going to affect us when we leave.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
goal of the safe space.
Yes.
Meaning we can pull off the Band-Aid in here.
Yes.
Say what we have to say.
Yes.
But when we leave,
Yes.
we shouldn't be worse than when we got here.
Yes.
But a lot of times that's not the case.
I think so. I want to be clear with this.
Okay.
There's some folk who say they help people with domestic violence issues, and they've not been properly trained.
Oh my.
Right.
Oh, my.
So I'll say this, and I'll take the backlash if I need to. Just call me at 708-483-8455.
Call in here, 323-870-4375. Call in right now. How about that? And thank you to, we forget to mention our YouTube viewers. We have YouTube viewers too as well. Thank you. Those
So,
watching on YouTube right now.
If you're with a therapist and you're telling them that you do all these abusive actions in your relationship, and, you know, you're honest and upfront, and they turn that into, okay, let's make this a treatment goal for the next 30 days. That's a problem. Because we look at domestic violence, abuse, like addiction, right? And addiction has a special model. Addiction has a special training, and it's ongoing training, right? We have where we go through, 60 hours of training. We go through 150 hours of supervision. We take a test. We take an exam to get certified, licensed, and we have to renew that license every 2 years, which involves going through ongoing continuing education, classes, right? So we never stop being trained. We never stop as doing research and looking at effective practices and what's happening as technology evolves and social media evolves, right? We never stop learning. So if you're with a provider who is not a certified partner abuse intervention professional, yes, that is an individual credential, there is a problem, right? Because number one, 2 or 3 sessions is not going to address the underlying root cause of domestic abuse when it comes to power and control.
Right.
So you're doing a disservice for this person, right? Because that person has a lot of other issues that they can bring up in counseling. So who's to say you're even going to stay on track with addressing this focus of domestic abuse? So yes, if your provider is not certified, right, I need you to look otherwise. I'm not saying leave them for other issues that you may be addressing, but for that specific issue, right, look for a specialist. Okay, it's vitally important. All right, and I stand on that because there's a method to this whole thing when we talk about rehabilitation, and it has to be done appropriately, and it has to be done right. Even when we in marriage counseling. And we hear where one of the partners, one of the spouses are violent, they're abusive. We have to refer them to an appropriate program. We can't just say, hey, we'll see you next week, right? I want you to go home and tell each other how much you love each other. That's the homework assignment after you just told me, right, that you are physically and emotionally abusive towards your spouse, and I did not refer you, right, you as this one person in this relationship to the appropriate service to address your issue. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So it has to be where that understanding is there is an appropriate outlet to address domestic violence, partner abuse, intervention needs. Okay. So looking at that now, I want to get to, right, because this is where I want to go. When you say, okay, what goes on, right, in these programs? Because I want to encourage somebody to say, if it's that deep, right, it's worth it. Right? If it's that deep, and I'm just going to get into the assessment to get in the program.
Okay.
So let's take a look at that. So even if you tell us, you've been abusive, however way you're coming into the program, we still have to do an assessment to say, let's assess the intensity of this. Let's assess, you. Let's get to know you and what's happened in your life so we can make sure we address your needs, right? Your needs that you need to look at to do change. So a part of this assessment is, of course, we get into if you've had any previous counseling needs. If so, who was that? We get into asking questions about previous relationships. We also do what's called a medical screening, right? Because think about that person who's sick. Right. And we go through things. If you've never ever known someone who was very irritable because they were not feeling well, they were told some bad news about their health, and now they're just lashing out, as we say, with everybody, you can see why that's a relevant question, right? Because they're not feeling well and they don't even know how to handle the news of their current health status. Right. And so you see how we begin to formulate, okay, I'm getting to know you, right? I'm getting to know much more about you, just asking you about your medical history and all that you have gone through. Then we get into how you see yourself, right? Talking about depression and anxiety and what you've experienced, even if you've thought about suicide or tried to carry out suicide. If you thought about self-harm, you may be like, well, but they're here for domestic violence, but they're still human. We need to know the whole person, right? So understanding the mindset of an abuser is very key, right? That's our job, is to get into the mind, to get into the being of an abuse. So yes, we want to know if they've ever thought about suicide or self-harm. Yes, we want to know if they've ever tried to carry out suicide, right? That's very relevant to how they see themselves. So you ever know somebody that wasn't okay with themselves and they always tried to control the situation because they were uncomfortable in the skin that they were in, right? It was always, no, you do this, right, the way I need you to do it because I don't want that spotlight on me, right? So you got to make me look good, right? You got to make me look good, okay? We have some comments here. Felicia says, absolutely, my payment is larger because she is a domestic violence victim and was supposed to move to a safe place. But that is obviously not working because he lives there. Who is controlling that? Wow. Wow. Okay. So here we go.
Boundaries.
Yeah. In this assessment, we go on to examine, right, in this relationship of which you have been most recently violent in, the one that got you the case or the one that's, being discussed. How many times has law enforcement intervened in any way in a conflict between you and your partner?
Wow.
Think about that question. How many times have law enforcement, right, had to come out and intervene in any way between you and your partner? And if you were arrested, we go on to ask, was it for battery, threats, violation of elder protection, destruction of property, breaking and entering, trespassing, right, stalking, telephone misuse, telephone harassment? These are things we go through. Like, tell us about this relationship, this last one, right? What was it saturated with? In whose behavior, right, goes with what? Then we go on to ask, right, have you ever violated any order for protection, or have you ever had orders of protection against you? Now, we talked about last week where if you ask that question to the person you're dating, right, number one, do you ask? And number two, what would you do if they did say that there were previous orders of protection against them in other relationships? Right? And so in this assessment, we evaluate that. Okay. Now I want to go to where we talk about some specific behaviors. Oftentimes I ask, how long have you been in a relationship? And so if you've been in a relationship 5 years, I would ask you questions about how many times have you cursed at your partner? And I mean, curse them out. Now, you may say that's a very unrealistic, right, question to ask somebody, how many times have they cursed out their partner? Now that's coming from the voice of an abuser who's not yet aware that that is one of the most toxic behaviors in a relationship. Right? To say, I can't remember how many times I've cursed out my partner.
Wow.
Does that make sense? Like when you think about that concept, right? How many times have you cursed out your partner? Right? If you have an unlimited or it's been so many I lost count. Is that a problem?
Absolutely.
Right? Is that a problem? We also go on to ask, do you treat them like they're beneath you? Do you make them give an account for their whereabouts and how they spend their time? Do you restrict their use of the telephone? Do you tell what?
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Yes, we have some. I think we talked last week about how to how to track. Right? Phones and all those different features. We have that. That's part of the profile. And we look at, do you blame, as an abuser, do you blame your partner for your problems? How often do you blame your partner for your problems? Right? Cursed out my partner and still, you know what, Felicia, and still went to church.
What? She say? Wait a minute, what I missed?
So, right, we ask these questions whether it's frequently, very frequently, rarely, or never. Now, one of the things that we look at as a red flag is if you say you've never done this in a relationship. So,
And this is your first time, or what?
no,
What do you mean?
So if you're in a relationship for, I stick with 5 years.
Okay.
You're in a relationship for 5 years, and I say, how many times, how often rather, have you called your partner out of their name? And the range is never, rarely, occasionally, frequently, or very frequently. You say never, right? And then I have 11 points that I ask here, and you say never to everything. That's a red flag to us.
Red flag.
Right? Because it's like, it's like you're here for a reason, right? And we know something happened, but how is everything never? Right? How is everything never? Okay, so just because you deny ever engaging in these behaviors, we actually view that as, you're guarded, right? You're guarded, and so we don't pressure you, right? We don't say, hey, let's stop until you tell us the truth. We actually note down what you say, right? Because
Nope.
I ain't never did it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. So looking at that, right? So then we get into, tell us the first incident of physical violence in your relationship. And I can't tell you countless times, just being in this field, we're constantly trained, and we know statistically the first incident of physical violence tends to happen early in the relationship. The first incident, right? And that can essentially mean they grabbed their partner, right? Or they shoved them out the way. They broke something, right? It tends to happen early on in a relationship. Okay. And then we talk about the most recent incident. What's the worst incident? And this is where we hear the most injuries occur.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could do the first, the most recent, and the worst. Right. And then we get into how do you typically handle conflict in a relationship. Again, this is where we hear various things. Right. And so I hope that, listening to this, as you can hear, we're not surface with this stuff. And you can understand why a person could be resistant in the beginning, right? Because we're asking them vulnerable questions about them. It's almost like holding up a mirror, right? Because all these questions say they're talking about you, right? They're talking about you. Tell us what you did. Tell us the situation, but we need to know you. And if you were responding to something, we need to know how you responded. And that's so not easy, right? There's a lot of patience and understanding that still, even in domestic violence, when we're treating, this particular person in this program, there's still a level of compassion, empathy, understanding that we need to have to make sure they are in a safe space to continue on going into their journey of change, right? Their journey of change. All right, here we go. Dr. Brown, how are you? Oh, he says, my wife and I have never called each other out of our names, and we've been married for over 20 years.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's good.
it is.
That is good. What? That's stuff. Red flag.
No.
Wait a minute. But
What's
then
your story?
You see his response?
Which one? Okay, I'm finna move on. Speaking of physical,
He said they got physical a lot.
and then I'm not gonna even read into that physical, right?
Okay.
Listen. Now the first one, that scale was rarely, never, occasionally, frequent.
Right.
This particular scale asks the number. How many times have you actually done this? We need a number.
Okay.
And 0 can be. So here we go.
Okay.
In the 5 years that you've been in this relationship, how many times have you thrown something at your partner?
Throw something at your partner
At them.
in anger.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Not just because you was trying to.
No.
Okay. All right.
Okay. How many times have you pushed your partner? How many times have you shoved them, grabbed them, slapped them, spanked them? And when I say spank, that is not in the
not in that vernacular.
not
You don't mean. Okay. Got it.
I never forget when I first started this 10 years ago. I actually had someone who said a part of their abuse on that particular day or night, they whipped their partner with the belt.
Oh. Okay.
Not like a child.
Oh.
As in,
Let me give you a spanking. Like
this person said, I didn't like the response that I got. They know not to do that. So I took off my belt and I whipped them as if they were
my
this, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. And,
Yes.
all right
So
you know.
that, and I'm sure they're not the only ones, right, to have done that.
Yeah, well, you know.
Right? So
Move on, Dr. Brown. Move on. Just move on. Just move.
right? And so thinking about that, some more stuff here. How many times have you kicked your partner?
Like super kick.
Kicked. I'm talking my experience. And you may think, who can do this to a partner, right? I think sometimes it's baffling when we, our assessments are our assessments, so we're kind of conditioned.
But there
to
are-
ask the question.
there
We've
have-
known people to
Yeah.
throw their partners to the ground
And then
stomp
stomp
and kick
them
Yes.
or be behind them and
Yes.
kick them in the back.
Yes. There we
Yeah,
go.
it can get that nasty. I've read and seen instances.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And looking at physically forced your partner to have sex, right? When you think about that whole concept of now you're making, right? Now you're making your partner out of punishment, right? Have sex with you, right? Even to beating your partner with multiple blows, right? When you think about that, like the whole concept of that is, this is the person you say you love. This is the person you say you respect, right? But and let me retract that statement because typically we don't hear that particular part, right? But really looking at when you say hit with multiple blows and they're down, we talked about fighting earlier. Some of how we see the kids fighting, there's some young adults who actually fight their partners that way. Right? Like swinging on as in, now I'm fighting my partner like they are, right? Somebody, out on the street. Okay. So really get serious. And then we ask, how many times have you drove recklessly to scare them? Right? And you think about that, like, I don't know if you remember where there were times where well, maybe not, but partners were pushed out of cars on the expressway, right? Or they're driving recklessly in the sense of they get out on the expressway, voluntarily because of how you're driving. This matters when you talk about behaviors in power and control. How many times have you threatened your partner with a knife or a gun? How many times have you used a knife or a gun? All right. So these are the things that we ask about, when we try to quantify, what has your pattern of physical abuse been like? How many times have you burned your partner? Right? How many times have you, threw them bodily, like picked them up and literally just tossed them? And if you look at that list that I just said, somebody can answer one time to all of these.
Right.
And that would be excessive.
Absolutely.
You understand? Because each thing I just said is a standalone category. Right? And so just thinking about that, if it goes beyond one, now we're getting a sense of what your pattern was, how you've been responsive in these particular relationships. Another part of that is right after we ask you that, we go into what were the injuries, right? Were there deep cuts? Were there black eyes? Were there broken bones? Were there injuries to the nose or ear? Kidney damage? Did they have to be hospitalized? Like really, when you think about, do you fully understand the magnitude of your abusive behavior? Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? And I oftentimes see when I'm asking these questions, that person who's like, wow, okay, right, this is uncomfortable, right? Because now I have to remember what I've done over the years. And I don't like the way I'm looking to myself. Right? I don't like the way I'm looking to myself because these questions you're asking me, I actually have an answer for. Right? You ask me, has my partner ever had a concussion? Right?
Wow.
Or when I strangled them, I have to ask you, did they lose consciousness?
And you have to give an answer.
Yes.
Yeah, because now it's making you own it.
Yes.
Yeah, now you're owning it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, even in the assessment process, we talk about the accountability. We
Absolutely.
talk about this is the starting point of understanding what's to come, what's ahead in this particular program, right? Okay. Then another part of this evaluation is talking about the children, right? If you have children, depending on their age, we get into have they ever seen you be abusive? Right? And we don't leave it at that. We say, okay, if your kids, if they're kids in the home or were in the home, if you live together, how are they at school? We get into the whole, okay, are there any issues with the children at school? If you have multiple kids, do they get along? Do you have any concerns with how they treat you and the parent? Have they ever been violent towards you or the other parent? Right? Because now we're seeing what the domino effect could be and what can actually keep, right, this violence in place now that we have kids involved. Does that make sense? And
Absolutely.
So this is again, I'm only on page 10.
Jeez.
Right? Of this assessment. Because this is serious business. Right? We're getting into the life of the abuser, right? So once we assess the kids, how they're doing, and if they've ever been abused, we ask you about you and how you grew up. Right? Now we need to know, have you ever been physically abused, sexually abused, or emotionally abused? Who did you grow up in the home with? Have you ever seen your parents hit each other? Right?
Help me with this one.
Yes,
because
yes.
there is this thing with raising children and putting hands on children.
Okay.
At what point is, because that I guess, if you're whipping your child to the point of injury,
spanking,
that is a form of
child abuse. Yes.
I guess the question is, at what point is it, because at any point it could be called child abuse. Okay. The minute you decide to use a belt to hit a child, they could, if a weapon, a over the top super whatever could say, oh, you're abusing your child because you spanked them on the bottom. Yes. Or whatever. Yes. At what time I guess where is the line drawn for a therapist if a child says, well, I got spankings as a child, and that's why I'm the way I am, because because
You mean if I have an adult who says,
yeah,
I got
because there are some in the education realm that believe that form of punishment creates, for lack of better words, it starts to create the thing, beating you into submission.
Okay.
That's been the thought process.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, it was, our parents thought it was normal.
Yes.
And thought it was normal for the school if the school said, "Hey, we use paddles, and we need you to be okay with it." And and some people signed off on it.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? I know this is domestic, but I know that you child in the children, so I'm wondering how that.
So most times I hear in that particular section where it asks, the person being interviewed about their history, it's excessive in the sense of it was clear abuse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Let me rephrase that. There are some instances where you hear, when I did something wrong.
Yeah. Spilling milk.
Yeah.
Knocking the glass of milk over is not an excuse for you to get whooped with a Hot Wheel racetrack.
Hot Wheel racetrack.
Yeah,
and that's the difference that I hear. So
yeah.
Remember, so when you ask the how and what leads a person to abuse, we do this line of questioning because we know that not everything will apply as to their how and what led.
Yes.
Right? So I hear a distinct difference in that person who discloses, right, my stepfather or my mother used to do this to me. I didn't understand why. I mean, they used to go crazy. There's some dialogue that comes out when this is disclosed. And I hear and I see the residue, right, of the trauma of that. But then there are those who say, yeah, back then I was wild, right? But, that was it. I wasn't called out of my name, right? I just remember this one time that there's almost like, okay, I remember when. Right? When I didn't come in the house like I was supposed to, right? And my mom and dad went off on me. So I actually hear, as a clinician, right, my ear is trained a certain way to listen for, is this part of how you got to, right, power and control and be an abusive relationship, just this piece? Because guess what? Now that may be a piece that I have to help you navigate through, right? Being abused as a child and having those scars. Does that make sense? So we're talking about residue. We're talking about unresolved issues that has to go into the treatment of this person, right? So I feel like if you fast forward nowadays, it's just so much violence in the home, period. You understand what siblings are fighting. There are many people living in the same household who's fighting. Couples are fighting. Boyfriends, girlfriends are coming and going. They're fighting. So it's everywhere. So they're learning how to fight, period. And they happen to, okay, you get the same cursing out that mama or daddy's partner get. Does that make sense? So it's almost like there's no distinguishment sometimes in this is just what we do, right? Hence, you as educators get the mouth. Yes. Right? Because the same way my mama curses out her boyfriend is the same way she curses out me. So why not curse you out? Because that's how my mom, or that's how, you understand what I'm saying? I'm doing what I see. Yeah. And I know it works, right? Because I see what happens when mama or whoever does it. Does that make sense? So I feel like there's a lot more stuff that goes into the concept of, this child that's being spanked. It's a lot more that's leaving residue.
Absolutely.
With that.
Absolutely. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So along that, we're getting a better understanding of, how they were growing up, right? Getting into the family of have they ever seen their mom hit their dads? And again, these questions sometimes is devastating for that person. Now, I want you to understand this line of questioning, right? I'm asking them to go back to a painful part of their life, right? And I say painful because 9 times out of 10, this person did not want to see their mother or father being abused physically like that, right? So me asking these questions, they're not putting necessarily together, hey, this is to assess, how you got to be who you are. This is, okay, wow, you bringing up some stuff. Right? And so you bringing up some stuff, you better be ready to help me through this now that you pulled this out of my subconscious and brought this to the front.
Right.
right? So when I say there's a method to the madness and find you a certified person to help you with this is how deep this goes, okay? So let's keep it moving here. We talk about your family, how you grew up, what you saw, what was left there. Right now we're going to talk about in this relationship, this 5-year relationship, tell me about the sexual, right, part of this relationship. And now this is where it gets, why you got to ask me about that? Well, because it's a part of a relationship. So we actually ask you, right, are you satisfied with the sexual relationship you have with your partner? Because there's a such thing as sexual abuse in a relationship, right? The threat of cheating, the threat of using sex as a weapon, right? If you're not satisfied, are you angry? Because they may not do, or you, whatever the case is, were you satisfied in this relationship sexually? Okay? And we get answers to that.
Okay.
we get answers to that. Another thing we talk about is, have you experienced any problems in your sexual functionings that concern you while you were in this relationship? Right? You see the safe space that needs to be here, right? Because we're going here, right? We just went a little bit deeper, right? We just went a little bit deeper in this whole thing, but that's not it. We also asked, what happens, right, when there were times when you wanted to be sexual and your partner did not? What did you do?
Okay.
Right? What happened when you wanted to be sexual and your partner did not? And then we reverse that question. What happens when your partner wanted to be sexual and you did not? Right? Have you ever had arguments about sex?
Okay.
Have you ever had, or do you have arguments about sex? What was the outcome? What typically would happen, right? Have these sexual conflicts ever led to violence? All right? Thinking about this is huge. This is huge. The thought of your partner cheating can spark a rage.
Absolutely.
Fit,
Absolutely.
right? And here we are talking about, you don't give it to me when I want to. You must be giving it to somebody else. You can't have the headache tonight because I want it, so you better do something. Right? You what you say, Tanya?
What you
You know that's it means
Right.
can seriously jump off just from the concept of
Right.
why you don't want to get down tonight.
Right. These are facts. These are big facts. Big
Okay.
facts.
Then this question about, have you ever emotionally pressured your partner to be sexual when they did not want to?
Emotional pressure.
Have you had ever emotionally pressured?
Okay.
How bad did you make them feel just to get them to have sex with you? How many names were they called?
Wow. I don't think that's a good idea, though. You got to call them names.
What? Wait.
What? Yeah, these people need some help.
Think about that, right? Even financial. This is where financial abuse is. Remember that purse that you asked for?
True.
Remember that outfit? Remember that trip you want to go on?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
That's emotional. That's psychological abuse.
Right.
Trying to get you some.
Right.
And we don't really think about how that tactic impacts the other person. Right. So sometimes it's not, we can have all these other types of abuse happening, which is why we ask these questions before it actually leads to a physical occurrence. Right. So it's relevant for this because we need to see the ramp up. We need to see how did the relationship become violent now that you have been arrested or you've been mandated or now you've been threatened, right, with jail time or you're losing your family. Right. There's some other stuff that went on, right, that could have led up to. Because the physical is not always the first.
Absolutely.
Right? The physical is not always the first, right? So we get into, have you physically pressured others, right, to have sex with you? Then we ask, have you ever been arrested for rape or sexual assault? Notice we said arrested, not convicted first.
There's a difference.
There is a difference.
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference, right? Because the next question is, have you ever been convicted?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Again, looking at who you are, your patterns. And mind you, we have to be judgment-free during this process. Right? During this process. Okay? So thinking about, that's that section. Now, this last section we get into is the substance use.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The substance use here. Do you drink alcohol? Do you take mood altering substances? And you may say, well, what does that have to do with anything? Sometimes people escalate their abusive behaviors when they are under the influence of a drug. I'm not going to even say alcohol.
Right.
Under the influence of a drug.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so it's relevant to ask, if you drink, how often do you drink?
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, we asked, were you intoxicated during the times that the police came out to intervene?
Wow.
Right? Because if there's a substance use issue, let's just say we identify in this screening here that you have a substance use issues. And sometimes that is the case. We need to refer you to a treatment provider because we can't address your substance use issue in domestic violence.
Mm.
And that's how we assess the needs of this person, is saying, what if you do have an addiction?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You still need services to help you on your journey to change.
Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying? And so that's the whole...
Because sometimes one feeds the other.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're trying to cope, right? When
Yes.
you think about, okay, we can get, and that's a whole nother topic, but understanding they use for a reason.
Yes.
And if they're trying to cope with or whatever it is, manage.
Yes.
Yes, that does play a factor in how they relate, right? How they relate to you. Okay. So we go down the list of substances, right? Have you ever used? Have you ever tried? Is there anything that you are, currently using because that's relevant to you, not coming to group, right? High or under the influence of anything. And so we go from there, right? It's a group setting, right? It's designed for it to be a group setting where you have a male and female facilitator. And these groups are not large. Most range from, 5 to 7 or 7 to 12, depending on the, the demand for that particular facility. But we're capped, right? So you just don't have a bunch of men in one group, a bunch of women in one group where they can't talk and address the core issues. So that's the other thing. It's a very small, right, safe environment to address these issues, just to make sure you get what you need for the necessary change. And there is a such thing as male and female groups, right? So no, these groups are not combined. They have their own standalone groups, okay? And so understanding that, women can be aggressors just as much as men can, and there's a group also for them. Same conditions.
Yeah.
They get the same assessment.
Okay, that's fair.
You understand what I'm saying? The
That's
same
fair.
assessment. There's no, hey, let's fluffy this up or make
Right.
this a little bit more
Equal
colorful.
rights.
Equal rights. It's
Equal
an
rights.
egalitarian approach.
Come
yes,
on.
it is. And you know what? We talk about being victims, right, prior to this relationship that you're in going south and you have a case or whatever you're mandated for. We know that typically women, when they do, when they are the aggressors, there's a significant percentage where they were the victim for so long in that particular relationship and they reversed, right? Meaning they said, no, I'm going to stay in this relationship, but now I'm about to get you.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And they do catch the case.
Okay.
Right. So that does happen. But there's a very small percentage that does not apply to, where their belief systems about how men are supposed to take care of them and do this, and this comes into play. And when that does not happen, then there's some consequences to that. So I can't say that, we have this, imbalance here with, most all women are treated as though they've been victims. Yes, there is a significantly higher percentage, but there are also a percentage where women, that's their design, right? This is how they were taught by the women in their life. I mean, there's to this day, there are some women that are teaching their young girls how to treat a man, meaning keep in check, right? What to do with their money, how to take advantage of. There are some women right now teaching their young women and their young girls how to do this and what to do if they don't comply. Right? So we kind of that's really the push for this as well, is understanding that there's a healthy way of approaching relationships, and it's not based on reality shows. It's not based on that men owe you something or women owe you something. We have to start dismantling. It's like I feel like it's being it's high tech right now with the concept of what men owe women today and vice versa.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Based on social media, and I see a lot of things where entitlement looks a little different.
Yeah.
I'm talking within the first 30 days of meeting somebody. You know what I'm saying? So we're trying to keep up, right? We're very much in the trenches for saying, wait, now what's going on with the DV now, where you're catching cases within the first 30 days of knowing somebody. Right? We're talking, it's cuffing season. Right, so let's be clear. October, as they say, has officially started cuffing season. Right? It's some folk, this is our highest season for domestic violence. Right? Because you have two people who have decided to become exclusive for the sake of not wanting to be alone during this holiday season. Right? And now we don't even know each other, and we don't even know how to act. We trying to live together. You moving your toothbrush in, all this kind of stuff, and you still trying to kick it with your girls or your boys, and we ain't talked about this. So even with that don't get caught up in the cuffing season, because you may catch a case, right? If both of y'all ain't on the same page with what this arrangement looks like.
Well, okay.
Right? Because in the spring it's gonna be over. Right? It don't get comfortable.
Right.
Right? You can't.
No, these are facts. These are facts.
Right? So understand, it's not just marriages or long-term relationships that get caught up in catching cases. It's the ones that are happening right now. Somebody is somewhere discussing, right, how we gonna be in this season, how we gonna be these, in these holidays. But by what's that, February, right? Valentine's Day. Right? It may look a little different for you.
Well, these are big facts as well.
All right. So y'all listen, I hope that helped somebody, right? And obviously you may say, how can I get help for myself or the person that I know who may benefit from these very, services that I've talked about, partner abuse intervention services. If you go to my page, there is a post there about finding a certified partner abuse intervention program. And that is the link to DHS that lists all the PAPE programs in the state of Illinois, right? If you don't want to go to the website, feel free to call us at the office, 708-483-8455. We do have a certified program, but if you just want to know more about the program and what it all entails and what the expectations are, and even when it comes to, funding or if insurance is accepted, if you just have questions, I feel like treat this as a part of your mental wellness plan. Just like if you were seeing a counselor or therapist for depression, anxiety, or some other conditions that you're feeling, changing jobs, needing to make career choices, treat this as part of your mental wellness plan. I am going to give myself help. I am going to give this information to my loved one, because I know, right, that there is now help. There's a specialized approach that is non-judgmental, and it's not brief, right? It is an investment of time to explore what needs to be done. Call us, right? We'll answer any questions you have just to help you get the resource that you need. All right. So there we are. We have concluded this month. Next week, I'm out at a conference for our profession, Illinois Counseling Association. So
where's your conference going to be at?
It is going to be in Naperville.
Oh, okay. I thought you was going out of town.
Don't do that now. That's in February. I'm going to Florida. For the American Counseling Association.
Oh.
Conference.
Oh.
Yeah. So I have to stay educated.
Okay, educated. Get your continuing education credits. Stay
So
certified.
I'm determined to gain all this knowledge and bring it back to my community.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I feel like we deserve top notch. So I'm making my due diligence to go get the top notch, right? And bring it back and display it. All right? So there you have it. Thank you all so much for sticking with us this evening. I know it was a lot. It probably, sparked some thoughts, some conversation, but I really encourage you to go think about it, give this information to someone, or like I said, call us, follow us on social media platforms. We still have there the services that we offer. All right. And we will see you all in November going into the holidays. So we definitely going to talk about seasonal depression. All right. And how to overcome that. Have a good evening and enjoy the rest of your week. Tune in tomorrow for Praise Break Friday.
Chill.
All right. We out of here, y'all.